everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hablamos VC. I'm your host, Laura Lucas, and this is Hablamos VC. Hablamos VC is a Latitude Ventures podcast show that will invite guests from a variety of businesses to discuss the current picture of Latino and Latina-owned businesses in the U.S. Each month, we will have a special guest on our show. Today, we are pleased to welcome Pete Amaro, partner at Latitude Ventures, to our show with an impressive background in venture capital, business operations, and entrepreneurship. Pete has been the latest addition to our partner group at Latitude Ventures. We are looking forward to hearing Pete's perspective and insights on his past experiences in the venture capital industry and the future of Latitude Ventures. Pete, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here. What's funny is, and I'll get into this, but my last company that I founded was a podcasting company. So it's a little odd to actually be on a podcast here talking about the next chapter. So I'll start from the beginning. Grew up in Chicago on the north side. My dad was from Puerto Rico. My mother was from Chile. I am a Chile Rican, if you want to kind of mix them up. And we were kind of a self-employed family. Which in my perspective was like the OG of entrepreneurship, right? Everyone was like, I'm self-employed, but when I look back, they were entrepreneurs. And so we had a little bodega on the south side of Chicago, and yours truly was stocking like Kit Kats and Twix and all that fun stuff that I definitely got into time and time again. But that's kind of where I learned my business chops, kind of working the cash register and learning a little bit about commerce and business. And a little bit about the hustle. And so kind of going back to what Latitude Ventures is all about, it's about that hustle. And that's why I'm really excited to be here, because I don't get to start my story with that chapter and a lot of the other places I worked at. You know, when I worked at Morgan Stanley and other places, I start off with where I went to school, right? But that chapter is usually left out. So it's really awesome to just really talk about that, because that's really, really fundamental to who I am. So since then, I did go off and went to school. I went to Wharton undergrad and did a normal tour of duty on Wall Street, worked at investment banks, UBS, Morgan Stanley, working 100-hour weeks trying to figure out what I was doing, but ultimately was in the business of buying and selling companies. After that, I spent most of my career in the investment space at a company called the Rain Group. And while we were there, we realized there was a ton more opportunity. There was a ton more opportunity, not only in growth, but also in venture. And so we launched a venture fund that was started off at $100 million, but then we raised a series of funds that was doing venture. But the through line was, it was media and technology. So like we were doing venture and media and technology, we were doing growth media and technology. We actually launched a hedge fund in media and technology because we were getting so many opportunities that we didn't know where to park it. And so we wanted a vehicle for every aspect of media and technology companies to have a place where we can deploy capital. In my last chapter at the Rain Group, we were very thesis oriented. I had a Latino media thesis in which we're looking at all the Latino businesses out there in the media space, promoters, film businesses. And the last thesis I had was in the podcasting space. This was had to be 2018 or so. So I think the only thing that was like really notable was like Rogan at the time. Like it wasn't a thing. Spotify was not in podcasting. It was just music. And the other thing that didn't exist was streaming. So I left in 2023, which is not too long ago, because I've been here for all of maybe 4 to 5 weeks. And I've known the team for a while. And it's just based on that background, hopefully it's just obvious, right? Latino, been in venture, been a founder, been an investor, building across a number of different funds. It just made a lot of sense. And this is the last stop for me, hopefully. I'm really hoping that we can really build something great here with the team. They've done an amazing job of building a platform with Kenny and Laura in terms of infrastructure, in terms of brand. And so I'm just here to just help kind of amplify that in any way possible.
Well, that's incredible, Pete. And like, what a story to, again, have you go into an industry in terms of podcasting and now We're here on a podcast with Hablamos VC, and you had the experience of being a founder and being an inventor. So all of those things, it's kind of interesting how the world works, where you go through all of these different things and the path just kind of comes full circle, right?
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah, well, let's dive in now that you're here and we're at Latitude Ventures. What is your perspective on venture capital today in 2023? Lots has changed, and what excites you about being in this space right now?
Yeah, what a time. What a time to join in venture, right? I mean, I think we're probably 4 weeks on the eve of SVB, which, side story is I was in San Francisco with Kenny and Laura, and we were in a strategy session and just talking a little bit about where we want to go and what roles we want to play. And we were immediately thrown into a crisis, immediately, like overnight. And so we went to kind of like, war room type of zone where we're like, okay, call founders, let's get through this. And let's make sure we have a very calm and strong perspective on what was going on, because everything felt like it was crazy at the time. And so that was me joining the team and reflecting on that, and just kind of a little bit about where venture is today, and talking to a lot of the people that are in the space. It could feel like your hair is on fire right now in venture, and the storylines are ventures down 50%, what's going to happen, who's going to make it, who's going to run out of cash. I think from my perspective, this all nets positive for the venture world. The reality is there was a lot of money thrown at venture in 2019, 2020, and pricing got a little crazy. Money was everywhere, and some businesses got funded that maybe shouldn't have gotten funded. And I think the reality is we're going to be in a period of price discovery, like figuring out what the right pricing is to price businesses appropriately. And where it's a bit tensions, there's a bit of tension right now between founders who have been in a world where pricing was a little bit higher, but also venture capitalists who are trying to figure out how to manage their own portfolios going forward. And I think that balance is healthy for the overall industry as a whole. From the investor perspective, if you're not fundraising and you've got capital to deploy, it's a really good time. I mean, most investors who come in are able to invest after a big shakeup, are able to find value in investing in businesses, the right businesses at the right value. From the founder's perspective, I would argue that, without capital as being the only solution, it will force, entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs, to be scrappy, to hustle, to figure out how to make their business models work, how to get that customer to fund their business, how to make sure they're running their business with a lot of hustle and grit to get through it. And that's part of the experience, right? And I think some of that could be lost when there's always capital in front of you. You're like, well, I'll just raise it again. What do I have to lose by hiring my second chief strategy officer? It's fine, right? So the reality is I think it will have a net positive overall to venture. I'm looking like after the crisis that we went through together, I think it's net positive. I think it's going to be great to grow this together.
So Pete, you worked in media and technology. How have you seen those markets evolve, and where do you think media is going?
Yeah, media is near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time in the media space, tracking it from the very beginning of just being content and going to linear streams where you watch it on cable or network TV, to being digital on YouTube and having ads come in and the world of ad tech come involved, to streaming, which is kind of the world that we live in today, right? I think the reality is some of the core truths remain. From my perspective, regardless of the technology that's out there, if you're watching it on a set-top box 10 years ago, or you're watching on a Roku 5 years ago, and you're watching it on your computer or your mobile device today, the reality is content is everything. Like, great content is king. And so I think the business models that have evolved around subscription are all great. but content is really king here. So the reality is, I think you'll see less and less subscription streamers start to pop up. I think the people that are going to be streamers are going to be there. Netflix, HBO, all of those players will still be there. I think the new ones will have a tougher time coming out because it just takes so much money to launch a streamer today. So I think the winners are going to be those that are really creating unique pieces of content in the world. I think those that are creating great IP and willing to invest in franchise value, those will be the winners of tomorrow.
So moving on, what are you most looking forward to now that you're in this environment in terms of deploying capital and resources that benefit the Latino community?
Well, I think the last part is the most important piece, right? Deploying capital is something I've done in my past, and it's great. I love the challenge of working alongside CEOs to figure out where they should be going in terms of driving towards, getting capital or figuring out good business models or identifying customers. I love that. But the fact that I'm able to do it in my own community while still maintaining returns, that's cool. But I'm a big believer that our community will develop a tremendous amount of value and there's great returns to be had. And so I just made it tougher on myself. And so have you, right? We are looking for great deals, the pie of great deals. In that pie of great deals, we're looking for those deals that are led by and founded by Latinos. But the principle is always, returns and driving towards that. And I think there's going to be tremendous opportunities. Because I think there's a cultural connection that we have with some of our founders that kind of have a similar background or perspective, and that goes a long way. And the reality is, like, if you look at private equity or growth equity, it's very rooted in numbers and optimizing returns for whether a debt profile, whatever it may be. Venture is about people. Certainly about the founders, where they come from, and the grit and the hustle that they have to grow their businesses. That is the part of a company life cycle that I'm most excited about being a part of. And the reality, if I can do it with people that are in the Latino community, like, that's even better. That's what really gets me excited.
Thanks, Pete. No, I agree. There's a huge pipeline of opportunity within our community. And that's the one thing that I think is very apparent to us, that the pipeline is there, that the talent is there, and the opportunity continues to grow. So shifting a little bit on towards some advice that you would give the next generation, Latino or otherwise, that wants to get into venture and work in the capital markets.
Yeah, I think that a couple things there. From my background, I always give this image of constantly climbing to like a new level, right? You're like, think about yourself as the side of a mountain and just climb, and you get to a plateau, you look up and you're like, what's over here? And like, for me, that was like, oh, this is investment banking. Climb. Oh, what's over here? This is like growth. Like, the reality is, like, you should continue to climb and just keep climbing because there's always another level. And I think the reality is, when you're an entrepreneur or you're someone looking to get into venture, I think that relentlessness of just continually find resources and helping you move forward will ultimately allow you to see something that you didn't even know existed. And so on the founder's perspective, I think the reality is, and the advice I'd give is to just stay true to what you believe in terms of the business model. When you do find things that you should go X or Y or think about, stay focused and grounded in what you truly thought the great idea was. Obviously listen, and it's always important to pivot along the way, but stay true and grounded. And I think it's going to be really important to stay true and grounded along the way from a capital perspective as well, as we talked about, in terms of sustainability and making really intentional moves with capital in terms of how to grow your business. So advice is stay focused and focus, and really be, intentional about how you deploy capital. In terms of getting into the venture ecosystem, it's not easy. I mean, the reality is, a lot of venture funds, unlike private equity or growth funds, they're smaller in nature. A $100 million fund, which seems huge, might have like 5 or 6 people, right? And it's a really small, so there's not a lot of seats to like fill, right? And so someone flips out, someone flips right in, right? And so the reality is getting into it, from my perspective, has been all about talking to people, and someone will give you a chance. If you really want to get into the game of venture capital, someone will give you a chance. If you just got to knock on door, you have to be an entrepreneur, like with yourself, selling yourself to get into venture capital. But ultimately, if you keep trying, you'll find your customer, which will be your job in venture capital. But it does require like knocking on a lot of doors to get that opportunity.
Yeah, it's definitely not a traditional way on how you think about entering the job market when in terms of venture. But those opportunities are there. It's just finding them, I believe. So what are you most looking forward to in the future of Latitude Ventures?
If I look out 3 years for Latitude Ventures, I think about, investing in, 2 to 3 times as many companies. I think about having capital sources to fund those along the way. We cap out, after Series A or so, and we can't fund those businesses along the way. Think about ways that we can kind of invest along the full life cycle so that we are a part of the entire journey. And I look forward to having a few really big wins. And these wins, what does that mean? Because what are we doing this for, right? I mean, I think we all want to be in venture, and there's money attached to being in venture, right? There is a business model of investing in companies and creating profit. That is just a part of our business. The other side of that is investing in, founders and companies. And our focus is Latinos and creating wealth within our community. And the reality is, you can be really wealthy or whatever it may be, with a day job and like, do really well. But creating equity and like having a monetization event, it can change someone's lives. And the reality, it won't only be that person's life, it will be that person's family's life. It will be that person's community's life. And you think about the trickle down effect of what that can have on our community, in terms of, person A does really well, gives to his community, puts 5 more of his family members through college. They all move on. They do the same thing. There's a multiplying effect here. And so I may not even be around to see what the impact is there, but I'm certainly excited about being a part of that story.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I watched it happen here in Silicon Valley with companies over the last few years with the surge of IPOs, and a lot of that capital with people that were exiting those companies. All of that wealth was being then reinvested here in the Bay Area. And for the life of me, you couldn't find any open real estate or any affordable housing or anything that was really, easily accessible, because all of those IPOs were the people that came out of those companies were bidding on these houses, and everything was being overbid. Now, times have changed a little bit, but that's the kind of, I think, momentum we would love to see for our community, to have that opportunity to, build that wealth and then reinvest it back in either their local community or the broader community across the US and even LATAM. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you, Pete, for taking the time to chat with us, to share your story, and to give some wonderful advice to our community. I'm really happy that you were able to join our team, and we look forward to the amazing things that you have planned and that we all have planned together in the coming year.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciated the time here. It's a real honor to be on the show, but to be on the team. And I think what we are doing here is really incredible. So, I equally look forward to what we're going to be building here together. And we're going to be building a great team, funding some fantastic companies, and hopefully creating some really cool podcast episodes after this. So thank you for leading the charge on this. And we look forward to hearing, I guess, from everyone soon.
Adios, everyone. We will see you in the next episode of Hablamos VC. Gracias.